Cool. So thank you for joining us for our fourth episode. We've just recorded it and it was a really insightful chat on online learning. We talked about why we think online learning has dramatically increased lately, as well as some of the pros and cons of online learning in all of its different forms. We also touched on some emerging trends and had a few potential disagreements about different types of online learning that we currently know about and are looking forward to in the future. So yeah, if you want to learn a little bit more about online learning and about what we think about it, then please keep listening and we'll see you again next month for our next awesome episode. Hello and welcome back everyone to episode 4 of FLINT Talks, the podcast. I'm once again joined by Derek and Caius, and this week we're going to have a really great discussion about something that is very near and dear to my heart from work and what I do every other day of my life as well, and that is online learning. So we're going to go over some really great topics, but first I thought I'd let the guys jump in and have a little bit of a chat about the kinds of online learning that they currently participate in. Caius, do you want to start? Any online learning you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, so I am a big believer into learning. I've often said that if I don't learn something new every day, my brain feels a bit stale. So it just gives me the big dopamine rush that I typically do in the morning. So you'll laugh at these two that I'm currently engaged in. The first one being becoming a bit of a semi-professional home cook. So I'm using an online learning platform called Ruby, which is great. And then the other one is I'm upping my golf game. So I've bought a course on Udemy just to get some of the fundamental mechanics in place because I'm trying to upskill my golf game and I just feel like it's a good summer task. If it wasn't for my current wrist sprain, I'd actually be on the golf course right now, seeing as we're recording this on a weekend. So those are the current two that I'm using right now. I've also engaged in big believer in Skillshare in the past, just getting those online subscriptions. They're real cheap if you can get a VPN and you just go from Argentina, costs you $15. Well, I don't know if I should have said that. Costs you $15 a year. Sorry, Skillshare. But yeah, just having those on the go platforms. So whenever I want to learn something, I just quickly jump on in one of those and see if there's a course readily available. So that's some of the kind of stuff I'm currently doing and stuff I've done in the past.
Derek, any online learning you're doing?
Yeah, I would say ever since I left university, all the knowledge that I've acquired has come from online learning. And so the two particular things that I've been working on is I've started a YouTube channel. So I did a course to get all the basics on how to be a creator, how to find your taste, how to do filming, editing. And you can argue that you can find this all online distributed across. But online courses such as that curate all of the knowledge into an easily consumable set of courses over the 6 weeks. So that was really powerful. And all my passion regarding AI, so everything in terms of the new technologies that are coming out with large language models, tools, I all do just via YouTube, really. There's a bunch of YouTube creators that summarize this and I consume their knowledge, take notes. And those two are forms of online learning that I do. And I really think it's the only way.
Yeah, absolutely. And YouTube was a great one that I've heard you talk about a few times, especially around the AI stuff. One of the other really cool things that I've been using, I want to say recently, but I've got a 602-day streak. So it's been almost 2 years, and that is Duolingo. And that's probably the biggest, or I say maybe the most common form of online learning in my life at the moment, learning Spanish. So that's been going really well, and I love the gamification of it. So yeah, that's a big one for me. And because it's an actual app, it's pretty cool. It just reminds me of my phone. It sends me a grumpy Duolingo face whenever I haven't done my Spanish for the day. But yeah, I love that. So yeah, lots of great options that we've got here. And obviously with the COVID and pandemics and everything that's been happening lately, all we've seen is an increase in these online learning options. So One of the big things, obviously, being that pandemic forced everyone to be from home. Working in online learning as the industry, as I do, definitely saw a rise in it from the pandemic. Everyone moved to webinars or Zoom learning, self-paced courses, because people just couldn't get together and do those face-to-face trainings that they were used to. So that's definitely been a big driver of the increase in online learning. But do you guys have any thoughts about what else might have pushed it forward? Derek, maybe?
Yeah, the pandemic was definitely a catalyst for online learning by far. Just the remote nature of it, being able to, with easy access to internet and a computer, get all the courses you need, all the knowledge you need. And it really forced teaching institutions to tailor their content to go online. I would say that is honestly being the momentum change. And once you create that and you realize, oh, what is possible? We can do entire university courses online. We can do full work learning modules online, and you're able to consume the same knowledge. And as soon as we were able to achieve that, I think that's just allowed a huge plethora of other things and that hybrid model to come through, which I believe is always the best, because you can't always do everything online. You need that human interaction. So the pandemic, definitely the instigator, but now it's just the future, really. But what are your thoughts, guys?
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you've said there. I'd also say, just on a broader level, it's also our generation coming through, getting a bit older, having the disposable income and demanding the convenience that we demand. So I think once we got to a point where we're at the age now where we've entered the workforce and we've shown it, and there's now a demand for learning online, a convenient learning, I kind of call it. I think that's kind of been the other push, as well as, I guess, COVID was a great accelerator, but then you've also got to think a little bit broader around aging, economics.
Yeah, and on that note, one thing we haven't touched on is the technology improvements that we've seen recently. And probably a little bit before COVID even, we saw some really great apps and resources coming through. Obviously, Zoom shot up, overtook Skype by a mile. Who even uses Skype anymore? Who knows? And then we've got some really cool learning tools coming through that I know Derek is chomping at the bit to have a talk about. Do you want to jump in there, Derek?
So I guess what we're really talking about is the pros of this. And so what I see is you've got all these platforms, as you say, but now more in my passion space of AI, you've got large language models that are essentially able to be tutors. And so you've got Khan Academy, a platform that I used to learn mathematics and coding and various different things, now have personalized AI tutors, which are huge. It's a huge benefit. And there's this problem called the 2 sigma problem. And what this essentially, in simple terms, is you can get a average student that in a class of 30 students, if they have one-on-one tutoring, they become 2 standard factor deviation better. So, and below average student can become above average. A above average student can become exceptional. So that's really what it's saying. And so AI now enables you to grow into that space, to become that exceptional student. And so I think online learning with that is the hugest benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, that one-to-one training is something that in a traditional classroom environment would be very hard to achieve. But with AI and putting it online, it means that everyone can have those tailored lessons and really focus on the little bits that they don't understand. Any thoughts there, Kais?
I've actually never heard the 2 sigma rule, and that's kind of cool. My brain's just going on thinking through that, and I totally agree. I think the point of ChatGPT being an online tutor is literally one of the reasons why it's probably like 70% of my use case for ChatGPT. Whenever I don't understand something at work or in personal life, I'm literally just on my phone going, can you explain this to me? And I think the real big difference has been being able to ask it a follow-up question. Whereas before with Google search, you couldn't really do that. So you're kind of stuck with like one article here, another article here, and you're kind of trying to connect the dots. when maybe you shouldn't have connected the dots and you were making connections where you maybe shouldn't have. And it's just the ability to look at like maybe 5 or 6 bullet points and go, hang on, I don't actually understand that part there. Can you just go into a bit more detail? That's incredible. And that shortened the learning cycle for me considerably. Like I truly believe with ChatGPT, there's like nothing I can't learn right now.
Absolutely. So yeah, ChatGPT obviously has gone above and beyond and become that tutor that we're wanting. With moving things online, we also open up obviously the accessibility factor, and people that maybe live out in the WOPs now have access to all of this learning that was previously only able to be accessed by people that lived in the cities and have the time to go to these courses. We've got those reduced costs. Like you said, Caius, with your VPN, you can just jump in and have a very cheap subscription to somewhere all over the world, whereas that learning for us may cost 2, 3, 4 times as much. And then you've got the free versions of everything. So I only use the free version of Duolingo. I don't pay for that, even though I could, but I feel like I get just as much benefit out of it. And then I just have to see a few ads. And I'm like, nah, it's 30 seconds of my life. I just put my phone down and don't look at the ad and then come back and the ad's gone. So it's great. So yeah, we've got all of those really cool benefits. But obviously with all of the pros, there are always a few cons to online learning. And Derek, you touched, sorry, I feel like I'm throwing it to Derek first all the time. Sorry, Caius, he's just relevant to this conversation. You touched on it a little bit before with not everything being able to go online. Do you want to expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, of course. So you cannot underestimate the interpersonal relationships that humans have and the effect of learning, motivation, focus that has. So, and I experienced this when I was in uni with my classmates. I could consume complex knowledge, really test each other, really have fun doing education and study at a far better rate and scale in a group in person than just sitting with my computer 2 times, 3 times speed, listening to a lecture. And so that's where you miss out. And if you don't have those groups where you can go and do tests or challenges and really put into practice what you're learning, then you're what I call a couchpreneur. It's the idea of you consume all these ideas, but you never act on it. So you're on the couch with these ideas. So that's really what it is. And so you have to put into practice what you learn online, and that can only be done in person. So that's my view. But yeah.
Guys, I see you laughing at couchpreneur as well.
Yeah. There's a go on. That's another word to my vocabulary now. I think in terms of some of the cons for online learning, it is that whole community surrounding yourself with the people who you can ask questions to. For one, they hold accountability. They keep you there. They keep you going. And I think I've heard something along the lines of like you can do all the consuming of like if you go about something yourself, there's like a ridiculously high success chance that you will stick to something like, I know it's online learning, but let's say going to the gym. If you have a community around you, and that's why a whole bunch of people that I know love the whole F45 thing, even though other people who don't use it think it's a bit of a cult, but I get the whole concept of having it as a tight-knit community and having those people drive you. Now, I've seen, I was one of those people who could consume knowledge significantly and would just literally go online, spend an hour or two studying a subject and then just continually consume information. And then I found out the easiest way to learn something is just to call somebody who knew what they were doing. So, I mean, back in the day when I was learning about the whole cryptocurrency boom, the easiest thing for me to do was genuinely just go to the New Zealand cryptocurrency meetup, talk to a few people about it, let you just sit there and listen. And then I'd have so many more ideas and understand what the right questions were. And so that was a real moment for me that highlighted some of the limitations of the online learning and really showed me the benefit of just picking up the phone and calling an expert. That'd be my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, and having that community around you is so important. Not to harp on about Duolingo again, but I don't know if you guys use it at all, but you add your friends and things, and so you can send high fives and you can do group tasks together and challenges and things, and you've got a leaderboard and all that stuff. So it's really brought that community feel into something that you are doing pretty much completely by yourself. And so that it's honestly a star example of how online learning can be done. And I'm not going to stop harping on it about it actually, because I love my Duolingo so much. But yeah, that is also one of the emerging trends that we've seen in recent times of gamification. They make it really fun. You get all these little challenges, you earn badges, all that kind of stuff. And we're seeing a lot more traditional online learning platforms picking up those bits and pieces now. You can even see it on LinkedIn with the badges and the certifications that you can actually display on your profile now to say, hey, I've done this, like, look at me, and everyone sends kudos and congratulations and all that stuff. And so even though that's not a traditional gamification in the way it's like not really a game, it's still bringing in that community aspect and giving a bit more of a show and tell, where an online certificate you might get sent to your email and it would just sit there never to be seen before. So that's one of these things that we're really seeing. But yeah, another thing that I've come across quite a bit is the virtual reality piece. I'm not sure if you guys have done any virtual reality online learning at all. It's probably more used for gaming and things, but a lot of especially in the health and safety industries, they're creating virtual courses for going onto the work sites and things. And you see it in like surgery examples and in the healthcare spaces where the actual action is quite high risk. So they'll create a surgery simulator, which is also a game, which is quite fun to play. I don't know if you guys have seen that either. Obviously a bit more high tech than that, because that one your hands fly everywhere. But yeah, lots of those kind of simulations for things like driving and flying planes and all that stuff, which I think is really cool. And yeah, I'm really excited to see where that goes in the future. Is that kind of how your golf training thing works, Caius?
No, not yet. If there was a golf training with virtual reality, I would so do it. I guess in terms of like some of the virtual reality things that I've seen, I love the fact that that's where it's going in terms of some of those situations where, as you said, they were high risk and it's hard to get the repetitions in without like risking your life. Whereas now with virtual reality, you can get the repetitions and then the brain doesn't. And there's research that says the brain doesn't understand whether it's a real situation or like a made up situation in virtual reality. You still get the same lessons out of it. And that's why visualization is so important for sports athletes. The one thing I have toyed with, and if it wasn't for my fat pad injury, I would have done this, is I was going to rent a virtual reality headset, because I don't know one, and buy the subscription where you would be simulated in a football field. And so I play football, and some of the skills you can learn is checking your shoulder. And as a midfielder, for those of you who are still tracking along now and I haven't bored, it's so important to check your shoulder a lot in football as a midfielder, because that's where your first touch is. And one of the big differences between an amateur player and a professional player is just simply the amount of times they check the shoulder before they get the ball. So I need to re-look back into that. Thanks for reminding me.
You're welcome.
You touched on an important psychological concept, which is the visualization. And like the studies that shown that people that visualize that will be better in the real world. And so virtual reality, huge benefit to that. But I'm actually not on the VR hype. I think AR is going to be more powerful than virtual reality, because I don't think the future is just putting a screen in front of these eyes that have taken millions of years of evolution. It's augmenting our reality with the technology. And so there's really cool technology such as the Meta glasses, which is like a Ray-Ban. I'm sure you've seen like it come out, and you can film essentially everything you see and hear this glass was able to take in. And then the AI in the background, you're able to prompt it. Instead of typing it into ChatGPT, you speak it, and it'll be able to see and analyze the images and the videos. And so that, in terms of online learning, now we're talking about real-time online learning, which is unbelievable. I think the next generation of learners is going to be amazing with the emerging trends that come in AR and AI combined. So that's my view on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I've seen a few of those augmented reality training courses as well. And it's pretty fascinating to see what they're seeing in real life and what's been put into it. Lots of hazards coming towards them. And there's a couple of driving simulators that do it really well. Obviously not while you're actually driving, but they have you sitting in a car and then they have like a ball roll across the road or something. And you have to tell them what you're going to do based on that reaction. And obviously it's slow down because there might be a kid coming or something like that. But doing those things, yeah, outside of those risky situations that we were talking about earlier makes it so much better for the learner as well as for her society as a whole, for that kid that might be running across the street. So yeah, that's a really great thing that I'm really keen to see how it plays out and how much more it gets used. Microlearning is another thing that I've seen a lot of. Now, you guys might not do much of this, but a lot of companies especially are chopping their online learning courses into tiny bite size. And now I actually think this isn't necessarily a great thing, because a lot of what we're seeing is companies being like, cool, this is only 5 minutes, do it on your lunch break. Or this is only a few minutes of your time, you can do it outside of work, without thinking that training for the job should actually be part of the job. So yeah, I don't know if you guys have experienced that at all, but that's just a little thing that I've been seeing popping up, and a little bit concerning because not many people seem to be realizing that it should be done on work hours if it's related to work. But yeah, any thoughts on that, Derek? Have you been forced to do any training in your own time?
Yeah, that is a con, but also what I see, and personally, I'm very particular in my lunch times and my out of office hours. I'm one of those Gen Zs that really loves work, but as soon as 5 o'clock's done, we're done. We're doing other things. But I see other problems with that, right? So if you're doing micro learning, you're context switching constantly. By the way, more frequent context switching, which is completely inefficient for flow state and focus. And second, you're reducing your attention span. And short-form content is already doing that to our generations to come. And learning only seems to accelerate that, and that does not seem good. What are your thoughts, guys?
See, I have an issue with companies forcing me to do learning that's work-related outside of work. If it's my choice, then I mean, yeah, that's my choice, but I don't have an issue with the micro learning making it smaller. I actually quite find that quite useful now. Kaylin touched on the whole gamification thing. I've never been a big gamification person, like in terms of, yeah, I get points for doing this. I'm just like, no, I'm just going to do it because I want to do it and I want to learn. And that's always been like my opinion, like the whole independent grown man sort of thing. That's been my vibe. But to the point of micro learning, I find that is probably the best gamification I've had, because it's smaller pieces and then you get the little tick next to it and then you got a little bar going, so you kind of see where your progress is. And in those moments where you're like I did one, I've been doing some learning more weekend. I put off the big 1 hour one until today because I was just like, oh, that 1 hour is just such a big grind. Like, if I do 1 hour, it was 1 hour 20. So I was thinking budgeting 2 hours because I was going to be taking notes as well. Whereas the smaller sized ones would be like, yeah, I do the 10-minute one, and I do the other 5-minute one. All of a sudden, I get the dopamine rush, I'm in a flow state, and then it's taken me 2 hours anyway. But I've just felt that I've accomplished a whole bunch more because I can continually see the little progress bar. So that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, and I guess it does just really come down to the type of person you are. Because like personally, I love microlearning because I like doing lots of different things. And so I'll do my little Spanish course while I'm eating my breakfast, and then I'll watch a YouTube video about the health and fitness stuff that I'm into while I'm going on my walk or whatever. And so I really like the microlearning aspect because it's much easier to do it in between and around the other things that you're doing. And we're all super busy these days, so it does really work. But yeah, it's very interesting to hear that Derek's not really a fan, but I completely see where you're coming from with that flow state and things, especially if it's something that's potentially quite technical. You'd really want to have the time to dive deep and get a decent chunk of learning all at once instead of just tiny little tidbits that you then have to piece together later. So completely understanding where you're coming from there. Do you guys have any final thoughts before we really start wrapping this up? I don't obviously want to take too long on our episode 4 since Derek has to edit it.
I'd say just stay curious, right? Now that I've heard the benefits of micro learning, I also realize I do it myself. So take everything, understand the person that you are, because the future is learning online, learning at a fast pace, and having an AI as your personal assistant to constantly validate what you're learning is true and test it in the real world. So I think that's the future, and I'm excited for it. The next generation is going to be crazy.
Yeah, I think my 2 cents on this to round us off is just with the internet, with access to a whole bunch of different people and experts. I think the whole online learning sphere has enabled us to really, I guess the sky's the limit. I can go and find an expert, chat to him on Instagram, which I do quite a bunch of times, and then adopt their system. For example, like when I first started at Fujitsu, when I got trained for sales at Fujitsu, we had our online tutor from America who's coming into Zoom calls, and we were doing a component of our own self-paced learning, but also him being online. But I just think that if we didn't have the internet, then I wouldn't have been able to have access to this really highly accredited trainer. So I think we're so fortunate to have access to people in all sorts of different countries and the best people. So yeah.
Love your 2 cents that ends up being like 200 cents. But yeah, it's great. That was our time's up, almost prompt popping up. So to close it off, thank you everybody so much for listening. This is episode 4, and we are super excited to continue recording these. Like to say a big thank you to TUANZ, the Tech Users Association of New Zealand, for giving us the opportunity to do this podcast, as well as for popping us into that FLINT group, the Future Leaders in Tech, where we get to do all of our really cool networking events, one of which is coming up next month. It's a micro chat with some CXOs. So if you're keen to sit down and have a chat to some C-suite people, follow us on FLINT on LinkedIn, or it's flint.co.nz, I think. And yeah, you'll be able to find out about that event that's coming up in a few weeks' time. Thank you also to Intudo, the online learning platform, who supplied us with the microphones to make us sound awesome. They're also my boss, so I have to shout them out if I'm running the podcast for the day. And yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts on what we've been talking about. If you agree, disagree, potentially have some other ideas, online learning in general, feel free to leave us a comment, follow us, like the podcast, all that good stuff. And we'll see you next month with our next awesome topic.